is, look, it's a crime against humanity for me to cover up this face. It deprives everyone around me of being able to see me.
The Georgia Virtue presents the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast.
Welcome to episode 211. This week we have gangsta basketball, government abusing cash. We have Marjorie Taylor Greene, and lots more. I'm Dave Roberts. I know. This week's going to be awesome. With me, giggling in the background.
We're going to talk about a lot of stuff this week.
We are.
That's awesome.
We are. As you couldn't hear, Jessica Salaji.
Hello. Luckily, I am awake and on my game, hopefully. I probably just jinxed it, but I'm at least ready. I'm more ready than we're about ready to talk about some stuff.
Yeah, we're ready to do some stuff and things. Hey, I was up late recording my other show. Mm-hmm. Sorry, Eric, who edits that show also, who had it dumped in his lap after he went to bed.
Yeah.
So how are you doing down there?
It's yellow, it's windy, it's cold, then it's hot, then it's raining, but we're here. How about you?
Yeah, for the next couple weeks, you can have any color car you want as long as it's yellow. Go to God. This is why I pay for a monthly membership at the car wash.
Mm-hmm. Can't hide money.
Can't hide money. Yeah, that $12 a month. Woo! Which I'll probably get an email from him shortly going, due to rising costs, it's now $50 a month.
Right. That's awesome.
So this was a pretty interesting story that you sent me. I read it last night. Gangsta Night was supposed to be fun. Some thought it was racist.
Mm-hmm. So this story is out of, I have like different Google alerts for different local government and small town tags and stuff. So sometimes it's not always Georgia, but the stories are interesting. This one's out of New York, and I can kind of, I can very much paint the picture of the small town because I cover small towns. So this is Windsor, New York, where there's 833 people. It's a very white town, according to statistics and the articles that I read about it. But this was an event that was supposed to happen it did happen at a basketball game. And the theme was Gangsta Night, and it's divided the community, and it was student organized. So, they were supposed to pretend to be members of the Crips and the Bloods, out of LA, and so they had fake teardrop tattoos, and some wore shower caps, white tank tops, low-rise jeans that exposed their underwear. And then I guess from the article, it said that one person proclaimed he was from the Bronx and wore a thick chain around his neck. They flashed hand signals and snap photos and shared them on Snapchat. First of all, it's a really interesting concept. I don't think I've ever heard Gangsta Night as a theme. Yeah, but
you've heard of Pimp and Hoe Balls and stuff like that. That's typically college level, but
yeah.
You've heard of Pimp and Hoe parties.
Yeah. So the pictures were on the internet, of course, because they were on Snapchat, they were on social media, things like that, and it got the attention. It all happened in public, but it happened at a basketball event, but supposedly one of the coaches was mortified and horrified when he saw the images online, and that his players had participated. And he said he messaged all of the athletes to chat about it and express his disappointment, and no one responded. So that is what prompted the local school district to investigate. And they said that some of the students had violated the school's dress code and committed actions of discrimination and, quote, violations. And then some faced consequences, but the superintendent did not say what those consequences were.
Oh, those schools had a theme night, I guess, every year. I think last year it was Hillbilly Day or whatever they called it. So they kind of do this, every year. We had gangster themed parties. And of course it was making, emulating the mob. So guys would wear fedoras and carry fake machine guns and look like a member of the Sicilian mob for a party. I mean, that sort of stuff happens all the time, and you don't hear of the Italian Anti-Defamation League coming out saying, you're appropriating our culture or anything like that.
And the superintendent said that it didn't, it was thrown together haphazardly and they did not authorize the theme. It was last minute, blah, blah, blah. They're students, they're children. I mean, yeah, they're 16, 17, 18, it was at the high school. But I mean, if you think it's offensive, I mean, they're students. They make dumb decisions. I don't think it's some scandal.
No, it's not. I mean, kids do stupid stuff. I don't know. Is that stupid? It's just a goofy thing to do. It's more emulating the gangster rap thing than it is making fun of it. These guys they get images off. I say MTV. No one watches MTV anymore because it doesn't have music. But off of videos on YouTube or whatever else, and they emulated. They said, "Well, let's do Gangsta Night." We did Hillbilly or Redneck or whatever it was last year. We'll do Gangsta Night this year. It just that doesn't really raise an eyebrow for me. Is it appropriate? I don't know. Would it be different if it were a school that were more evenly mixed? Maybe.
So the coach that was upset said he was hired last year and it's been an uphill climb as a black man trying to explain to white parents and students why the costumes went beyond innocent entertainment and came across as offensive instead. And his quote was, "Some of these adults are saying, oh, you're just making a fun thing that kids do over clothes as a major issue. But it is a major issue. Let me ask you a question. Are you going to be looked at as a threat in those clothes and get stopped by the police and harassed? If I do it, I'll get ripped apart." But
first of all,
that's not really that's not really a reason, in my opinion. That's not a reason to be.
It's also not reality.
Well, but it's not it's not a legitimate reason to be disappointed or offended by the event, because you're just I don't know. Just because you can't do something, you say you can't do something as a costume. I actually have done something similar to this in my public speaking class in college. I had to dress up like an MS-13 gang member. And I had to drive to class that way. I actually got pulled over on the way there in my attire. No, I wasn't asked any questions, even though I was wearing sweatpants and a white tank top and
please say there are pictures.
A bandana, but I just no, I wasn't questioned, but I don't think I wasn't doing anything that would warrant me being questioned. I was driving. I was speeding,
look, if it's cowboy and Indians, can't do that, can't appropriate that culture. If you want to do something to celebrate Cinco de Mayo, no, you can't wear a sombrero. The theme nights are supposed to be fun, so I don't know what I guess you just can't have fun anymore.
I would be offended. I mean, not offended, because I don't like that word, but I wouldn't want to be called a hillbilly.
I mean, yeah.
And they said that, I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't find that like a fun theme. I don't think it's offensive. If they said that they did it about their own community and people live on farms and in the country. Well, just because you live on a farm or in the country doesn't mean but nobody lashed out or,
In fact, if we were talking about a school inside the city of New York that's predominantly black, and they had a hillbilly day, none of us would be offended. Okay.
Apparently only 22 students in the high school, or in the district, which has 1,600 students across all of it, are black, less than 2%. But,
yeah, and I've read some of the quotes from some of the recent graduates who were black and some of the students, and talked about, being called racial slurs and things like that in class, and teachers not doing anything about it and whatever. I don't know how much is that's true. But would it be any less if they were anywhere else? And does that? I don't know. I think there's a cognitive disconnect between doing Gangsta Night and a student saying something stupid and offensive to another student. There's a cognitive disconnect there, because I don't think that Gangsta Night was intended to mock anyone. It was intended to dress up and have fun. And it's a culture that these kids have been inundated with since they were born. Because these kids at 17 years old have never lived in a world without YouTube.
Well, I just don't like this world we're living in where everything is a scandal. I guess that's what it comes down to. Like, okay, so let's just say that it did slip through the cracks and there were some people who had bad intentions. I don't think that everyone who dressed up did it to offend or harm or embarrass other people. I also failed to see why, the word gangsta, are we going to pretend that, if you're in a gang, you're a gangsta? That is.
Well, and
are we going to pretend that that's not a reality?
Well, and it's something that we got in our vernacular out of the music industry.
The culture,
I wouldn't even know the term if I didn't hear it with NWA and Ice Cube and Snoop and that kind of stuff. I wouldn't even know what it was, other than I could figure it was gangster.
Well, and do gangsters or gangstas, however you want to say it, do they dress the way that they suggested here?
I don't know. I know a certain amount of it is uniform as far as identifying, who's on what block and who's. But I have no idea. The last time I knew anything about gangs, I have no need to know a whole lot about it, because we do have gang activity in Paulding County, but I don't see the L.A. blue handkerchief versus red handkerchief thing. And I don't know if that's still a thing. But yeah, it's sort of a uniform and be able to identify each other based on colors. Assuming you saw the movie that was made 25 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But I don't know. Everyone obviously has the right to feel the way they want to feel.
Yeah,
but I don't.
Look, the best thing they could say is, you know what, this wasn't the best idea. From now on, theme nights will be cleared through administration.
Yeah, but to come out and say that it was acts of discrimination, who did you discriminate against? Who was harmed? Who was told they couldn't do something or had to do something?
Right.
That's not cool.
We live in a world where the victim is the highest form of being. And no one was actually victimized, but you wouldn't believe the things I saw. There were shower caps and pants hanging off of butts. It was horrible. Did anybody touch you? No. Anybody say anything to you? No. Anybody keep you out? No. Okay. How are you a victim? So, speaking of victims, we have taxpayer victims. ARPA abuse.
Yeah, in headlines of, I told you so, like, all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, look at all these abuses that are piling up. Oh my gosh, these local governments and state governments aren't using the money the way we said they should use the money. What are we going to do?
I blame the county and city attorneys for a lot of this stuff. It's their job to keep these, elected folks out of trouble.
I blame Congress. They never should have given them the money in the first place.
Yes. Yes, but when these municipalities do stupid stuff, they pay a county attorney, a city attorney, to keep them from doing stupid stuff. Because, look, most of the people that run for county commission or city council are just citizens. They're just trying to do the best thing they can for the community for the most part, or a lot of times for themselves. And they start thinking that they're smart and get to the league of minutia of, well, maybe this does count as this. Maybe we can use this for that. So the examples of abuse.
I wouldn't. Hold on. County attorneys, and the problem with county attorneys and city attorneys is that 99% of the time, the county attorney is the lowest bidder.
Or the chairman's or mayor's friend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it should be law that you can't have a county attorney from where you live. Like, I think they should have to be at least like 50 miles away.
That'd be expensive.
100. No, zoom them in. They don't need to be there. What do they need to be there for? So
they need to be in the damn room when they're in executive session. Because the county attorney's job.
They just sit there. Why?
They need to be a referee and say, no, Mr. Chairman, you can't discuss that. This is only for.
That's never going to happen. Never. It will never happen.
That's their damn job.
But it will never happen.
I understand. I'm talking now. I'm the idealist, and you're the realist.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But going back to the ARPA abuse, I mean, some of the things, I think we've all seen headlines at this point about different things, and the most recent headlines are kind of spurred by Rubio's request that the Government Accountability Office, of course, they're blaming it on Democrats, which, if you look at the roll call vote from ARPA, it was 50-49 because it was in March of 2021, which was a year after the first round of CARES Act funding. But there's been just as much abuse. So I kind of a little bit resent the fact that we're pretending all of a sudden that like Democrats are the only. I mean, we've talked about it on the show. Both parties, both presidents under COVID have funneled money everywhere, every which direction. So and
contributed to inflation and everything else. When people start blaming all the inflation on Biden, I'm like, yeah, remember the first round when all Walmart TVs went up to $2,500, whatever it was? Yeah. Guess who that was?
So, this is a recent. I think there should be accountability. I don't know that there will be, but we should. I'm glad that it's at least getting pointed out because it's absurd. I mean, a police department in Honolulu used $150,000 to buy a robot dog so they could monitor unhoused populations. I mean, why couldn't you just get a drone at that point?
To keep an eye on bums.
Yeah. In Wisconsin, a lot of the criticism has been on law enforcement because a lot of times law enforcement is underfunded anyway. But, a $5,000 signing bonus to recruit new officers. I don't think anyone is against that. I'm just against you using COVID money to do it.
Right. Yeah. If the people of Wisconsin want to pay more for recruiting officers, that's fine. This money was earmarked for COVID.
And
that's what I'm talking about, the mental gymnastics. Like, I'm sure they got into a room and go, well, we would have more officers if it weren't for COVID. So in order to recruit more officers, we're going to use the COVID funds.
Well, and, the ARPA bill was never, like, when they say it's supposed to be used for COVID, like, if you were just going to talk about things on a superficial level, you would think, okay, PPP or PPE products, vaccine implementation, actual like distribution of these products, testing, and then care, right? Like that's what I think most people would think. Maybe there's a few things that could be the legs off of that, EMS. But when you...
I was about to say ambulance services to transport, upgrading ambulance to be able to handle COVID patients without infecting everybody in the ambulance. Cleaning services, cleaning abilities for ambulance and ER dealing with that. Yeah, stuff that's directly related to
But COVID. Then you look at, and of course, like we can all make the argument that COVID impacted our lives, whether we had COVID or not. I mean, that is the truth, like because of what the government was doing. But when you look at the bill, I mean, it was 243 pages. So it's not like what we just said, we said in probably 10 bullet points and a couple sentences. Like it didn't have to be 243 pages. But the reason it is because there's farm loan assistance for socially disadvantaged farmers and EBT program expansions and student aid information and national endowment for the arts stipulations. I mean, Head Start, child care stabilization, the list goes on and on and on. And so, just as well as I do, that a local government is going to have a pet project in mind and go look at the list and be like, well, this is close enough.
I'm going to stop saying I'm from here. How about Broward County?
Man?
Oh, man.
$140 million cash infusion to break ground on a high-end hotel that will have views of the Atlantic Ocean and an 11,000 square foot spa. I'm assuming that that's because there was some, like, the county acquired the property and then I guess decided to flip it through, like, development authority type stuff. Don't agree, but whatever. Here we are.
But it's very hard to connect those dots to COVID. Even the most mental gymnastics I could think of doing, say, well, COVID wouldn't be so bad if we had another resort.
Yeah.
Dutchess County, New York pledged $12 million for renovations of a minor league baseball stadium to meet requirements the New York Yankees set for their farm teams.
It's not even COVID limitations of like spacing stuff. I mean, none of that. Ted Kennedy's Institute for the U.S. Senate in Boston, which is a nonprofit that they created after he died. I guess it has struggled for years. They got $5 million to pay off debts for it. For a nonprofit, like, Alexandria, Virginia overhauled their tourism website.
Well, so did Woonsocket, Rhode Island, remodeled their tourism website.
Yeah. I know.
That seems to be a theme with a couple places, tourism.
Well, yeah, I guess they're trying to draw people back to build back revenue, but I don't see it. And then in Maine, this is one of the most, I guess, probably well-documented abuses, in my opinion. Apparently, there was a city that had applied for some sort of grant to get a roof on their community center, and it was denied. So then they used the money from this instead. Like, I don't think you can do that. But it's...
Yeah, meanwhile, you've got hospitals that are losing nurses. You've got ambulance services that are so stretched so thin that people bleeding on the side of the road have to wait 30 minutes to get emergency care.
And it's never ending. I mean, this is all going on. And on and on and on and on and on, and it's never going to end. I mean, we're already talking about the gas stimulus. Freaking Gavin Newsom is doing it in California, and Congress wants to give people $100 a month every time gas goes over $4 a gallon for any period in a month for the rest of the year. And so it would be for each taxpayer. So if you filed jointly, you would get $200 a month. And then if you have dependents, you get $100 for each of them. So a family of four is going to get $400 a month from the federal government to help offset gas prices that are up because of decisions by the freaking federal government.
Yeah. Let me fix this with more free money. You know, it's all Putin's fault.
Well, and God, I don't know if you saw too. Well, first of all, the lawmakers in Congress who propose this are from Illinois, which, yes, not all of it is Chicago big city stuff, but the people, some of the stuff they're talking about, like the people they use mass transit. They don't have a car. They're not paying for gas. So, and the time that it's going to take for something like fees to trickle down to people on something like that is much longer than people who are dealing with it at the pump, where we wake up and the next day it's 20 cents more. But, you know, that doesn't stop them from proposing that, and freaking Gavin Newsom rolling up saying he's going to allocate $750 million for 3 months worth of free public transit for everybody. Like, please tell me, are you telling me that, like, you drive a truck for work, a work truck, like, you're going to park it and take public transportation because gas gets too high? No.
Yeah. How about people who don't live in LA, who don't live in San Fran? They're taxpayers too. So you're telling me the taxpayers out in Napa have to pay to give free public transportation to the people in LA? The answer to inflation is not more free money. And the only way to get through inflation is to grin and bear it, because it's here. You have to punch through the other side. And there's giving people more money and opening the spigot further. Inflation is like having a flood, and government caused it by opening the spigot. And their solution is to open it more. It's not to close the spigot first and then start getting the water out of the flood zone.
And even when, anything they give, they can't take away. You know, how long has this nonsense with the extended EBT stipend gone on? I don't want people to starve.
Look, I know people who do fairly well that opened the mail and got like an EBT card. What the hell is this? It's ridiculous. It's not even means tested anymore.
Well, free lunch hasn't been means tested in.
Yeah, well, you get what you pay for, don't you? This is a good time to remind you that these are our opinions and not those of anyone not on the show or any respective company for which we may work, own, or otherwise associate ourselves with on a regular or irregular basis. Also, you can find other episodes and relevant stories over the GeorgiaVirtue.com. We just had my home county of Broward. Now we have my congresswoman. Marjorie Taylor Greene's candidacy for office has been challenged.
42-page lawsuit by the Free Speech for People group. Never heard of them, but that's not whatever. They said that she's constitutionally disqualified from congressional office for her involvement in the January 6th Capitol riot. Says she violated the 14th Amendment, which states that no person who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion. Don't you think that if she could be charged, they would have charged her?
There was no insurrection, number one. Number two, the 14th Amendment specifically applied to members of Congress who went and fought for the
Well, I understand that, but like, they have charged people, and they have charged people with regard to insurrection. So whether or not you believe that it was one or not, it doesn't matter when the federal government comes in and says, we're charging you with that. My point is that she's low-hanging fruit. If they wanted to make a spectacle, wouldn't they have just charged her already?
You would think so, number one. Number two, charge is not a conviction.
Well,
now, they make it a conviction
I know,
of something.
My point is that, like, there would have been pursuit of a criminal pathway if that was a thing. You can't just that's
especially her, because there aren't. Yeah, I know, I understand. Especially her, because there's not a single Republican member of Congress that maybe gets that would stand up and go, hey, that's wrong. They all just kind of hang their heads, look the other way, and go, well, we'll let her go. Because none of them fought to get her back on her committees.
Well, so apparently this process was, the allegations of challenging her candidacy, it almost, because there hasn't been any type of formal, admonishment or accountability on the criminal level or, outside of this, it seems kind of like they're just trying to harass her, because when you file a complaint like this, there's a hearing, it's filed with the Secretary of State, and it's an administrative hearing, so the burden of proof is on her. Like, it's not like when you're in court and the state has to prove everything for you. You have to prove that you are suitable for office.
Yeah, it would be quite the coup to remove her from office.
Remove her from the ballot. That's what they're trying to do.
Right. And what I like is the name of the plaintiff, Free Speech for the People. Yeah. When organizations like that say free speech, they mean anything but free speech.
But her, true to form, she can't come up with a good response to save her life. She said, "This is the same evil playbook the dishonest communist Democrats use against President Trump and his family."
Yeah. She actually had a good quote, and I don't have it in front of me, that I saw yesterday. Like, if she could do more of that. But she also knows her base. And let me tell you, she plays well to her base. I'm not sure her
entire base is on the exact same page as her, though.
I'm not talking Republicans. There's a strong base of who I refer to as spit cup Americans.
Right, but my point is that that's not what the 14th district is made up of.
You'd be surprised.
Like
I've been to her things, and I see the people that turn out for her. Now, maybe I don't see any of the challengers, and this is probably why they're filing a lawsuit, going to dethrone her. One, because she's an incumbent. Two, like I said, her supporters are, ravenly supporting her.
And I get that, but the point is that, the people who show up are showing up because they are that type of supporter. There's other voters, and sure, it's all going to come down to turnout. It's going to come down to turnout in the primary and the general for her, really. But
well, I doubt we see the 14th go Democratic.
No, I don't think so either. But it's still going to come down to turnout of whether or not. Because people didn't turn out for Loeffler and Perdue, and that is part of why they lost.
Well, yeah, but her fans will crawl across broken glass to vote for her. And they can't tell you why. And if I say something, criticizing Marjorie, they go, "Well, I like her. She tells it the way it is." Huh? I'll say something reasonable like, "We're not properly represented because our representative is on no committees, and all she can do is vote up or down. Anything that she drops is instantly dead. So she can do nothing for the 14th. Well, she tells it the way it is."
She might, but she's also
it's the same thing over and over
on a committee.
Right. You know, the Army term for it is combat ineffective. So she even wrote something about, since I'm not on any committees, I had a chance to see how Congress works, and drops a bill that's instantly dead. I understand it, even at our state level, the folks that attempted to rise up against Ralston were thrown in the back halls of the state capitol. I understand that stuff happens. I'd be interested to see, and I'd like to ask her, do you think that if Republicans retake Congress, that you will be put on committees? Because from what I've heard of the House leadership, they have no desire to deal with her. They're fairly embarrassed of her. And so am I on a certain level. The persona that she puts out, the QAnon stuff that she does, when she shows up to rallies for somebody who has been openly anti-Semitic, that stuff's embarrassing. Because again, I'd say this is my Congresswoman.
Congrats. I bet Brett Raffensperger's like, this sucks, man, because he has to be involved in the hearing.
Yeah, and here's the thing. The people who are totally pro-Margie, anyway. Are not Raffensperger people.
Because he didn't.
The only thing I could hope is the hearing will come quickly, so it can be cleared and out of the way. If he removes it from the ballot, fine. Then we get, qualifying. This is probably on purpose that we don't get this until after qualifying. But then we have several other people that we can decide on, and money can go into those campaigns.
But right now, after she qualifies,
I've seen
because it's a candidacy challenge.
Well, this is true.
The 42-page complaint. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you. I mean, what's she going to say? All she can get up there and say is, "No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, I didn't."
Shaggy defense. Wasn't me. We got you on camera. Wasn't me. All she gets to say is that, get up there and say, "Look, I was exercising my First Amendment right as a citizen of the United States. I never intended to overthrow the United States."
So
that's all she can say. I don't know how you can prove. You can't prove or disprove intent.
Let me read you a couple lines from the lawsuit. So because it kind of speaks to exactly what you're talking about. It says, on January 5th, Pence informed Trump that he did not have the authority to unilaterally reject electoral votes and consequently would not do so. This was widely and publicly reported that same day. Nonetheless, Green insisted that the following day would be, quote, our 1776 moment, and that, quote, the people will remember the patriots who stood for election integrity. And then it says, 1776 was a code word for violence in the run-up to January 6th. For instance, Ali Alexander, a violent extremist who listed Representative Green as a speaker at his January 6th event and referred to Green as a friend, replied to a tweet by Green on December 30th, 2020, promising that 1776 is always an option if objections to certification were blocked. The responses indicate it was understood as a call to storm the Capitol. I mean, I hear you, but she didn't. They literally are saying, this guy said it. He replied to her tweet. I mean, and she's not allowed to delete stuff because we know what the law, we know what you're supposed to do about that. So what was she supposed to do?
Well, this all goes back to Alex Jones. That was his thing. 1776. Yeah, that was Alex Jones who started that stuff, who is playing a character. He's making fun of the people that listen to him. He's playing a character. But it's funny that the Q people and all these people have picked up on the Alex Jones things and kind of spun off of that. Hell, it wouldn't surprise me to find out that Alex Jones is Q, just to stir people up. And Alex Jones pulls an Andy Kaufman. If you remember Andy Kaufman, who was the first troll where he pretended to be insane for like a year and a half and go on Letterman and stuff like that and just troll people. Alex Jones doesn't believe most of the stuff he says. And he went on Rogan and basically said, I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot sometimes. So the 1776 thing, that's where that comes from. It's going to be real hard for them to say that that's open insurrection against the United States to use code term 1776 when we celebrate that every 4th of July.
Well, you just can't blame someone else. I mean, it's just like, to put it in simpler terms, it's like when we had the trooper down here who was in jail without bond, and the reason for not granting him bond was because they were concerned with how the community would act. Well, that's not a reason to withhold someone else's freedoms. It's the same thing here. You can't say she's not eligible for office because of what somebody else said.
And let me tell you something. It doesn't matter how people feel about Green. It doesn't matter. If this is allowed to go through, and people, especially out here, think that'd be a great way of getting a legitimate candidate in there that'll actually, work within the confines of Congress and not make the news every other day for the wrong reason. I understand all that. If you let this through, this establishes the way business is going to be done. That if we don't like a candidate, we're just going to sue them out of existence. And I guarantee you this group is not out of the 14th.
No. I think they're from
North Carolina. This group is probably funded by somebody else. Right. So this is not what they're saying is the people of the 14th don't have the right to elect their own representative, having all the facts, knowing what she said, knowing what she continues to say, and they continue to elect her. That's the right of the people when they go to the polls. Yeah. Look, I'd love to challenge Nancy Pelosi. Although I do have the idea of having the devil in there, with her out of power, so you can keep pointing at her and use her as a campaign strategy. But same thing with Barbara Boxer. I'd love to just file with the California Secretary of State and make them defend their actions and their words. But that's not the way a republic works. We in the 14th have to concentrate on our own representatives and not what California's doing.
I did misspeak, and I just want to correct it before. They're out of Massachusetts. I misspoke because Madison Cawthorn is facing the same challenge in North Carolina. The same group is representing them, but it's Georgia voter. Like, they're challenging on behalf of Georgia voters. So there's a Georgia attorney here that's helping, but the free speech, right.
Well, of course, they have to hire a Georgia attorney.
But it's Georgia voters who are bringing it. It's just being pushed by Free Speech for People, which is based in Newton, Massachusetts. So.
Because nothing says Georgia more than Newton, Massachusetts. So we have Trump v. Clinton 2022.
Because it just has to be the song that never ends.
A 108-page complaint.
I was a little shocked that there was not a statute of limitations on stuff that happened in 2016.
I don't know.
Honestly, there's not, because he's doing it, but he's accusing Clinton, her campaign, various aides, Comey, the DNC, and others of racketeering conspiracy for allegedly joining in an unthinkable plot to falsely accuse Trump of colluding with Russia in the 2016 presidential election.
He is keeping his name in the news. And he's continuing to do it by vilifying somebody that most Americans don't like anyway. He did just win a big court case against Stormy Daniels, so maybe he's feeling the flow from that. I think it's like $300,000, something like that. He won that she owes him the court costs.
Does she have it to give to him in currency?
I doubt it. In currency. Somebody on TV broke it down to how many lap dances she'd have to give.
How many was it?
Have you made $20 per lap dance and you owe $300,000? How many lap dances is that? It came to so many per day for the next how many years.
Well, it's 15,000 lap dances. So if you wanted to knock it out in a year, you'd have to give 41 lap dances a day, every day for a year.
Yeah, but average song is 3 minutes.
That's 123 minutes.
Should be dead.
If you didn't stop.
Yeah,
like
if you didn't stop. If you just had a conveyor belt of people with $20 bills. Way to tie a stripper into the Clinton story. And those two things should never go together.
No, they certainly shouldn't. But they filed it in federal court in Florida. But I love the dramatic language attorneys use in things like this. Like, in the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, Hillary Clinton and her cohorts orchestrated an unthinkable plot, one that shocks the conscience and is an affront to this nation's democracy. Acting in concert, the defendants maliciously conspired to weave a false narrative that their Republican opponent, Donald J. Trump, was colluding with a hostile foreign nation. They did do that.
They did.
It's just the language kills me. Like, it's so an unthinkable plot. Like
that language was meant for the people. Yeah, it is meant for us. That's not meant for the judge. The learned members of the bar see past that stuff. Unthinkable.
Well, that assumes that all members of the bar are learned members. But
they are learned. They're not necessarily smart.
The Politico, though, the coverage of this, first of all, I find it interesting, and I don't know if by the time when we're recording, if it just hasn't gained a whole lot of traction yet, but it has not gained a whole lot of traction, and I was a little bit surprised. I just kind of expected the story to have more attention, but it seems Marjorie is taking it all. But Politico was not kind to him.
Well, they
called it a greatest hits of Trump's long-held grievances against the public figures, mostly closely associated with the investigation of his campaign's ties. Well, yeah, that's the entire point, is that they were all closely associated and they said these things.
Yeah, I don't think that anything will come of it. And look, most media outlets are not going to cover it because it has some validity to it. And the other reason they're not going to cover it is there are actual things going on right now that pertain, one, to the world in general, our country, and people who are actually candidates on ballots. And Trump is none of those. Neither is Clinton. So as far as newsworthy stuff, it's certainly noteworthy. But neither one of them is in office. Neither one of them is on a ballot. Is it something that needs to go before a judge? Absolutely. Is it something that people should probably know about? Absolutely. But what are you going to push? Are you going to push current election stuff? Are you going to push Ukraine? Are you going to push inflation and the economy off of the headlines in order to run this story?
He accuses them of obstruction of justice and theft of trade secrets and unlawfully hacking into his private communications. And one article reported that that the suit seeks $72 million in damages, which is a lot of money.
It is. But from whom? Who? You have to say, number one, that she was aware of everything's going on. And if you compare this to Watergate, the break-in at the Watergate Hotel was not coordinated by Nixon, nor was it coordinated by Spiro Agnew. There's just no way at that level the sitting president or vice president would actually be authorizing something that petty. But they covered it up. So they were complicit in the cover-up. It's possible that Clinton had no idea and she was handed this information and she ran with it.
So once again, I would like the opportunity to, because I actually just opened up the lawsuit in the first page that I went to. It says that on October 31st, 2016, 8 days before the election, This guy Sullivan, I forget what his first name is. I think, well, it doesn't matter. But he put out a written campaign statement that claimed that Trump and the Russians had set up a secret hotline through Alpha Bank and that federal authorities were investigating this direct connection between Trump and Russia. He portrayed the shocking discovery as the work of independent experts, computer scientists, and such, without disclosing their attachment to Hillary Clinton or the Clinton campaign. And then it lists the entire statement, which is pretty long, that they put out. And it said that he was acting in the scope and authority of his employment with the Clinton campaign when he made the false statement, which was made with the intention of harming Trump and his campaign. I mean, that's true. And he was employed by the, like, at what point are you responsible for what your employees put out?
At the point that you know it's false. And I agree. Even if she found out at the end of October and that first Tuesday's coming up fast, there's no way that she fires a guy and comes out and says it's not true. Nobody at that level of politics is that gracious. I'm not excusing the actions, but it goes back to the whole idea of what did you know and when. What did she know about this, and when did she know it, and when did she decide to become part of the cover-up? Again, that's what got Nixon. It wasn't the actual break-in; it was the cover-up. But I would like to see this actually investigated by the DOJ. I think that's what this lawsuit's pushing: is get it into the courts. If they can get some sort of civil fine, or they win the lawsuit, then it can be an added push to get it into the DOJ. But the DOJ is run right now by Biden, and I just don't see that happening. But this is laying the groundwork for a 2024 run, where if they win this lawsuit, even if they win $1, he can stand up and say, "Look what they did, and I have a court that found they were responsible for doing this, and we won it. The amount doesn't matter." So real quick, we have a Virginia judge says parents of 12 immune-compromised kids can ask schools to require masks.
So this is the only reason I put this on there is because I think it's fascinating the way that this went through the courts and came out with actually no resolution. So the headline is concerning because, we've had public schools for centuries. We've had immunocompromised kids in schools for centuries. And this is the first time that they're talking about having other kids in a class wear masks to protect the immunocompromised kids. But so the headline and the story is that a Virginia judge ruled that the parents of the 12 children that sued can request that their schools require other students to wear masks. That is what happened, but and this obviously came as a result of the governor signing the executive order saying that masks were optional in school, and then the General Assembly coming behind them and signing it into law. So the plaintiffs filed the lawsuit under the Americans with Disabilities Act and said that they're not getting the reasonable accommodations because of the law, and the immunocompromised kids have to miss classes. So this Judge Norman Moon, issues a preliminary injunction that says the families have the right to ask schools to require masks, but it doesn't force the schools to override the law. And then his argument said that though federal law supersedes state law and requires, quote, reasonable modifications for students with disabilities from otherwise applicable state or local laws. So the order reaffirms the executive order and the law that was passed, but says parents have the right to make choices. So, but I'm trying to figure out how they didn't have the right to ask before the lawsuit. Like, you spend all this money and you're declaring it a victory, and the media is declaring it a victory, but it's literally the same. Like, the school system can say, well, we can't. All they have to do is put the kid in a classroom on his own, or put all the immunocompromised, mask wearing students in a classroom on their own. It makes zero sense to me, but It's getting all...
Or on Zoom. And look, even before this, we had John Travolta, the boy in the bubble, where his homework was brought to him because he was immune compromised. He lived in his own bubble. Look, reasonable accommodation is not that everybody around you bend to what you need.
It has never been that.
It is a reasonable, right? It's reasonable accommodation, meaning if I have a desk job that's open for somebody, someone comes in a wheelchair, that I move the desk or get a desk tall enough to get the wheelchair in there, something like that. It is not. I have to hire a paraplegic to be an air conditioning tech, knowing that he can't drive, can't lift equipment, can't work with tools. Say a reasonable accommodation being that everybody else bend around him and he gets his own driver and someone to carry the tools and he's just there. That's not reasonable accommodation. Telling every other kid you have to wear a mask because these 12 kids is not reasonable accommodation. The word is reasonable. And violating state and federal law is not reasonable. I don't know. I guarantee the parents didn't spend any money on this. This is more anti-mask advocacy or mask advocacy madness that's out there. And look, it's sad to me that masks have become a political statement. Wearing a mask is now thumbing your nose at anybody that essentially conservatives have been saying since, I don't know, for more than 2 years now that masks aren't going to help you. It's sad because you should be able to make your own decision based on your own health that I should wear a mask or I don't need to wear a mask or I decide that I'm willing to throw the dice on the table and take a chance I'm not wearing one. Because look, it's a crime against humanity for me to cover up this face. It deprives everyone around me of being able to see me. All right, Jessica, since we're winding down, how about your closing thought?
For some reason, there's been a lot of violence in Miami the last week, I guess, in the entertainment district with some spring breakers and things like that. And so they instituted a curfew from midnight to 6 a.m. Businesses had to close, and I haven't been following it closely enough to know where it's all coming from. But the point that I am, the curfew did not, I guess, alleviate the violence. So they decided to order the sale of or distribution of any alcoholic beverages for off-premise consumption from 6 p.m. on for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Whatever. If people want to act a fool, they're going to act a fool. But my favorite quote, like they interviewed all these people, as the media always does, and they had these two guys from New York City. And they're like, I've never had a curfew before, and no one tells me what to do. And this guy's like, I think it's totally insane. We're from New York City, and we don't like that stuff. Sir, the entire world watched as the city and state of New York was brought to its knees during COVID and did not challenge any restriction or limitation and said, thank you, sir, may I have another? So, I'm sorry that your party week is being disrupted, and I don't agree with it, but let's not pretend like these are some rebels without a cause from the state of New York, and they're just down here in the People's Republic of Miami trying to rise up and liberate. I've just thought it was laughable. So that's my closing thought.
This happens. This rotates around the South. Fort Lauderdale used to be the spot to go to, and kids got a hand. And look, when I grew up down there, we knew it was spring when the news told about a college kid who tried to jump to the pool from his balcony, not understanding that it looks a lot closer to the pool from the balcony, way up high, and it goes splat. It happened every year. So Fort Lauderdale started to shut it down, crack down on it. Then it went to Daytona, and then it went to Panama City. Now in Gulf Shores, in the springtime, it is illegal to drink on the beach. Only in spring.
Well, mean, I don't agree with any of that, you know? Like, I don't. I just... No one tells us what to do.
Well, the communities do this because spring breakers don't spend money. They actually drive away people who do spend money. When I say they don't spend money, 8 will get a hotel room. They'll go to Walmart and buy a bunch of beer instead of going and buying at the restaurants. They'll go to McDonald's, and then they trash the beach and show no respect for it because, you know, they're just renting or they're just there temporarily. They don't live there. Sure. They don't care if they trash the beach. So that's where it's coming from, is trying to push them. But this tends to rotate around from beach to beach. As soon as somewhere relaxes, they go there. I don't know, man. I don't know what the cure is other than a heightened police presence. And, you know, then we'll hear Miami's turning itself into a police state. Oh, speaking of vacations, I have a new spot to go. Epstein's Islands are up for sale.
How much?
$125 million, which really is a bargain for owning 2 islands. One that's fairly well developed, the smaller one, and the bigger one that is available to develop. And I'm sure the bargain price is sort of like if you find a murder house, it's going to be a lot cheaper because a lot of buyers will be pushed off of it. But I thought that was interesting that made the news. And before anybody gets offended, the proceeds will be used to pay his debts, including those who have judgments against him.
There's that fund that
or his estate, I should say, against him.
Disperse.
Right. And this $125 million, whatever it sells for, will go minus the real estate fees, blah, 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 will go into that fund to compensate victims. I know there's no compensation for what happened. I understand that. But it'll go into that fund to distribute to those who have gotten judgments against him and now have it against the state. So it's not that so really buying this is helping the victims. So if anybody wants to loan me the $125 million, let me know. I'll let you fly in and use the helipad.
Wow, that's so nice of you. What a trade-off.
I know. Can we get a sponsor for that?
Let me know.
All right. So, Jessica, thank you very much. Eric, thank you for editing. And again, for the other show that I do, sorry. I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.